Football with friends is fun as hell. I'm Alex Dunlap. Oh man, what a big show we have in store for you guys today. I just got done doing my predictions and my projections for the Texas Longhorns offensive depth chart. So we'll talk about that. And as you can imagine, no one on Orangebloods is coming at me and saying, giving me any kind of trouble about, yeah, Alex, how you have this guy here, this guy here. We're going to talk about that. We have some other things that we're going to get to as well. But I think that the offensive depth chart will take a while because we'll certainly have to get into the weeds about how I see this offensive line playing out and sort of some of my methodologies behind some of this stuff and some of these statistics that I'll be referencing from the deep dig. We'll go over all that stuff, how that data is collected, what it means, and maybe learn something along the way about offensive line play and what we can expect this season. I wanted to talk yesterday just about, whether the hype around the Texas Longhorns this year, whether the hype is warranted or not. I think that there's an important sort of lesson there, and there's an important dichotomy between what the local media is saying and what the national media is saying. It feels like there's been a kind of role reversal this year, and I'm going to tell you the exact reasons why. We have Anand Nanduri, my good friend Anand Nanduri, who I met, I guess, not this last draft in Kansas City, but at the draft before that in Las Vegas at the Player Profiler House, the content house where we were doing all the NFL draft coverage from there. Anand is a super, super sharp guy, former NFL salary cap dude. He's worked in the betting space. He has one of the great podcasts called The Decision Point with my friend Matt Kelly. He's also just you guys think you're crazy about the Longhorns. He's maniacal about Ohio State. So I want to talk to him about not only Ohio State this year, preview that kind of stuff, but also, his thoughts on, CJ Stroud with the Texans. He has thoughts on Quinn Ewers, from his time at Ohio State, Ryan Watts, all this stuff. Darwin Lemon in the chat. What's up, dude? Paul, text guy 2. Great to see all you guys. And, if you guys have any thoughts about today's theme of the day, hunting versus fishing, certainly love to hear from you about that. It's something we kind of talked about yesterday that my son wanted to go over, and Blake and I said, man, that needs to be a theme for a whole other show because it's like, man, so what's that book wherever that horrible book where the mother had to choose between her two children, where the soldiers came in and they, like, one of the children had to die and she had to choose. It escapes your mind too. It escapes my mind. Somebody in the chat, Sophie's Choice. It's like not quite like that, clearly, but it feels similar, man. I love hunting and I love fishing so much. So we'll talk about that. We'll weigh out, hunting versus fishing, which one you prefer. Darwin Lemon saying fishing for me, more time to drink beer. It's one of my big concerns, because here's the thing. And look, we're going to get into the depth chart, but one of the things about fishing versus hunting. So in hunting, basically, if you're hunting for deer, if you're hunting for exotics in Texas, that's basically what I do. I've always wanted to go on a big Western, Western hunt. I'm going to go on one. I'll bring home an elk one day, but it's true what Darwin Lemon has said here. Fishing for me, more time to drink beer. We have Scott Hinman saying hunting all the way. So if you hunt in Texas, the kind of the hunting culture here is, a lot of, it's like, it's something that's kind of, taboo in other parts of the country, but in Texas, just being so spread out and having all this land, a lot of places you don't have very good cover. You have scrub brush. You have all this, all these areas where it's kind of hard to get a spot and stalk hunt on. I certainly kind of like the spot and stalk best. It's my favorite way, especially when you can kind of do it from an ATV and you can find the herd, and especially with some of these exotics that go on herds, you can get to them, you can go after them. But there's a lot of stuff where there's feeders and blinds that are 100 yards from the feeder and stuff. And so, it's just like you can take a beer or two maybe on the night hunt out into the blind. It's like, if I'm going fishing, I'm taking a cooler beer. I'm taking like tequila. I'm taking like soda water to make the ranch waters with and stuff. But anyway, so we're going to talk about all that. There's also the stuff about freezing it. I hate freezing fish. So anyway, we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about, you guys finally sent me some emails. Here's the problem. I'm too cheap to own a printer. And I didn't think ahead yesterday to have my wife print them off at work. And so she's going to get home in time to take the kids to their jiu-jitsu practice. But she's not going to, she didn't have time to get the emails. So I might not be able to read them off paper, but I'll read some of them. A lot of them had to do with fantasy football. And I had 2 emails from 2 separate people about having the one pick in fantasy football, whether you take Christian McCaffrey or Justin Jefferson. And to that, I always say, well, that's up to you, because there's ways to navigate it both ways. And people look, it's just like, well, they look at me like, what? What does that mean? I'm going to show you what that means. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my mock draft simulator, and I'm going to run 2 simulations using the latest version of my PPR cheat sheet, the magical mystical sheet available to our pro members over at rosterwatch.com. I run hundreds of simulations every day to make sure I'm ahead of ADPs on this kind of stuff. And I'll show you how a McCaffrey team will look and how a team will be built when you're building it optimally and you're leveraging ADP at each spot versus how a Justin Jefferson team will look, because your expectations of how your team is going to look should kind of go into that decision for you. We have Ryan Foster saying fishing is year round, but hunting is only 3 months for me. Nothing's better than deer camp with my boys during deer. So that's absolutely true. For me, it's a little bit different because my main target species is always axis deer. So that's a year round thing for hunting, but I understand that a lot of people, axis are only available in Hawaii, the Indian subcontinent, and the Texas Hill Country in certain spots, and you're lucky to have them in those spots. So certainly agree with the fact you can fish, and you can also fish at night. And I guess you can spotlight hogs at night, but it's just like, nothing like fishing at night. All right. So let's get all to the rest of that. Okay. Well, Jay Ward is a hunting man. When you hunt for a living, you got to love it. Hey, Jay Ward, tell us a little bit more. You hunt for a living? You need to email me and tell me all about this, dude. You and I need to hook up off air, man. You can show me what you do. I can write it off as a business expense, meeting one of my friends from the radio show. All right. Also, my son wanted me to just throw out there as a possible topic, maybe in the chat. If you could only just have one breakfast, what would it be? Your last breakfast? I thought that was a pretty good idea for a 5-year-old kid. And we'll talk about that. I also have a very, very special cake recipe, chocolate cake. I'm going to talk about that. It actually was one that was sent to me by accident. There was an old family recipe from some other family. They sent me the recipe saying like, oh, here's grandma so-and-so's recipe. I'll read you the email. Man, my wife cooked this cake. It's the best cake in the world. I emailed the person back. I said, look, you got the wrong email address here, but make sure you get it to the right person, because my wife made that thing. And your Aunt Betty or whatever, that really is the best cake recipe. So we're going to give that recipe out as well. One final thing, we do have a 2-game preseason slate tonight. We have the what is it? It's Philly and Indianapolis, and then Atlanta is playing Pittsburgh. We know what's going to be happening with the starters with a few of those teams. We feel like we know what's going to be happening at least with Pittsburgh, but we're still waiting on all this stuff about the starters for Atlanta. I don't think Bijan's going to play, but I have Blake hawking on Twitter trying to find out, all right, is Anthony Richardson playing for the Colts? How long is he going to play? Is Bijan playing for the Falcons? Because there's some prize picks markets that I wanted to talk about as well. So we're going to get to all that stuff. Oh gosh, we got a bunch of all right. So Jay Ward, he guides and videos waterfowl hunts. Let's see, dude. That's all new to me. I'm a little bit squeamish about these waterfowl hunts because I think you get way too wet and cold. I would take wet and cold over this nonsense we have right now. Danny Juarez, Huevos Rancheros with a side of refried beans, potatoes, and bacon. Woo! Take all that, put it on a tortilla, Danny Juarez. Samuel May says Migas from Trudy's back in the day. Trudy's isn't as good now. But do you know what is still good about Trudy's is the red and green salsa. When I was young and I was playing, and I was back when I was playing football and playing rugby for the Austin Blacks and stuff like that. Like after those games, I would go to Trudy's, and there was something in my like deep down in me that would crave that sauce, man. Like just that green sauce. I would almost want to drink it. All right. We're going to talk about all that stuff. Oh, and then the other thing We didn't get to talk about my reaction to some of the things that Chris Del Conte said yesterday. So I want to talk about those things first. Oh, and Jerry H said it. Thoughts on Yormark? How about this? Let's start with this. Let's start with the one hard truth, okay? One hard truth about the commissioner of this godforsaken little brother of a minuscule little tiny little baby boy of a conference that Texas has had to play in, has been cursed to play in for the last 20 something years. I can't believe it's been that long. Any conference that you have to play and you have to be associated with put it back up, Blake. Any conference where you have to be associated with a pissant school like Baylor is not a conference that you should be in if you're a school like Texas. You just shouldn't. It's a pissant little conference. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark today. Coach Joey McGuire, I'm not going to put any pressure on you, but I'm going to be in Austin on Thanksgiving, and you better take care of business like you did right here in Lubbock last year. Okay. Here's the hard truth, guys. Are you ready for this? Remember, I'm not always here to blow smoke and tell you everything that you want to hear. Sometimes we're going to have some hard truths. We have to talk about some things that are tough. You know, if I'm blessed to have this audience for the whole football season and we're talking about some of these games, there'll be times when I'm going to tell you that players perform badly. I'm going to tell you there are times where, in my view, there were, decisions that were made, be about a member of the coaching staff or whatever that I think are terrible. I'm gonna tell you those things. There's some hard truths we're gonna have to discuss. Here's a hard truth. Texas is there will be a game this year where Texas gets swindled by these idiot refs. It's gonna happen. Texas, it'll very likely steal away a victory. There will be a game that Texas does not deserve to lose, that Texas will lose because of these crooked refs. They've been crooked the whole time. This conference is a complete disaster. It's the officiating in the Big 12. I could do a whole show about this. But this year with the it's almost like an organizational or a systemic pettiness against Texas and Oklahoma that goes even farther than the pettiness and the really I like to think of, Blake, what is it when you're not thankful for something? Like, what's the word for that? Like, you guys in the chat would be able to know. It's like when you go about something and you do it and like you've been allowed something but just by the grace of somebody else, and you don't even think about it. And you're right. The entitled nature. Thank you, Gina Fry. The entitled nature of this, of these teams that get to play in this conference with Texas and Oklahoma, right? That it's been, whenever Texas has gotten screwed, it's always just been like, oh, like who cares? Like, we'll just take all their money. We'll take all the TV money for my pissant Iowa State school that nobody even cares about. We're gonna split it all evenly down the middle. We're gonna ride these guys' coattails. We're like they talk about how Texas is entitled. Unappreciative, South End Zone Queen. Ungrateful, says David Hitt. That is the thing. Nonchalant from Jareth Mulholland. I'm not sure that that's exactly right. I think nonchalant is more like kind of like flippant or like uncaring. That's kind of how they are, right? Yeah. So maybe nonchalant. Anyway, hard truth. Texas is going to get swindled at least once this year. Hate to tell you. Okay. The depth chart. You guys want to talk about the offensive depth chart? All right. We start with the offensive line, and it's pretty simple for me as far as the starters. So we'll just go with the starters across, from the very beginning. Of course, the left tackle will be Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks was an absolute phenom as a true freshman last season. Came in and basically outplayed everybody's wildest expectations. I do this thing where I look at the disruption allowed and or penalties caused on a per snap basis for all of these offensive linemen during the time where I'm doing the deep dig, right? And so, like, I'll tell you what I do when I do the deep dig. It's like You're going to think I'm crazy. You probably already do think I'm crazy. So, but here's what I do. I have a scale, right, that goes from -2 to +2. Okay. And 0 is right in the middle. 0 is perfectly baseline, perfectly normal. And what I do for each block that each offensive lineman makes on each play of each game is I give them a grade. And that's a 10-point scale, right? -2, -1.5, -1, -0.5, 0, +0.5, 1, 1.5, 2. Okay. And you can think about those as like 2. I maybe gave like 4 2s all last year. That's you look at the you look at the assignment, and whenever you think about the assignments, each one is notated so I can go through and I can search by run block in the run block concept key. And it's pretty broad, but basically I label them as such. One is an inside zone run, or it can be any a derivation of a zone run. So, I mean, you can have like a zone read. They'll will be usually out of inside zone. There's like a QB bash they run. There's a zone slice or a split zone thing you've seen a million times, right? Where the offensive line all takes their zone angles, and you have the H back or the sniffer that's sort of back there behind the tackle, crack back, right? Weak side. So those get labeled with a 1. Anything that's like a power or a man blocking concept, right? Stuff where maybe, the left side of the line blocks down, and the right guard comes out and pulls around and kicks out the defender or something like that. These are called like, power concepts. You call it gap concepts, man concepts. There's lead concepts, right? Where you have this side of the line block out this way, this side block out this way. When you have a lead blocker come up the middle, usually the same kind of one of those H backs. Those are, you can call them traps, you can call them counters, pulls, those types of spots, right? Those are labeled as 2. 3 is easy. That's just outside zone, right? And you can consider those basically everything like, outside sweeps and just, wide zone, these kinds of plays. That's just like an inside zone, right? Where the offensive line works in the same coordination, but they just start with a much, much bigger zone step. And you can tell not only by the zone step being much wider for the offensive line, but also the zone angle and the aiming point for the running back being a lot wider and more to the sideline as far as where he starts and where he starts to design where his cutback is going to occur. That also includes a concept that's called pin and pull, where even though it looks kind of like a man concept because you have maybe one guy who pins down and another guy who pulls around, right? And then one guy that pins down and another guy who pulls around. Well, you still have those two guys who pulled around working an outside zone type of concept, and most certainly the running back still working that same outside zone angle with his initial step and looking for that similar kind of outside zone lane. Okay. And then the 4, that's just other. And generally what that is like a quarterback draw or like a designed run, stuff like that. Not many go in other, right? Most of these things, 95% of them are 1s, 2s, or 3s. So once we understand what the concept is, right? That's the first thing you do. You look at it, you're like, all right, what's the concept? If you've been doing this like me for the last, I guess I've been doing this 12 years. You look at it and it's pretty easy to tell right off the bat. Sometimes especially when it's a new coaching staff and you're just getting used to these guys, you have a little bit of trouble. But with Coach Flood, I'd studied him so much, even before I'd watched a lot of his coaching clinics, and they run so much zone. And also whenever we get to go to these practices, a lot of the times, especially when we get to other practices in the stadium, the media is sat in a place that is so very close to this hands-on teaching that's going on with the offensive line, that there are a million things you can pick up by just sitting and listening to this man for 20 minutes. You're like, oh, all right, well, that's what they do there. So all that stuff is taken into account. The grade is given, right? And then what happens is those grades go into a formula at the end of the grading session, right? It usually takes me about 2 days to get through it and get it done. And then I give them letter grades. And what those letter grades do is they're just a product of that. And it's just an algorithm that I put in to where these grades resemble sort of in a similar way to like a grade that you would get in school, even though it's not exactly like that. I came up with this system back whenever I was working for this website Bleacher Report, right? It was one of my first kind of NFL analysis and NFL draft roles, because what they had me do was that I was on the NFL scouting team, and my job was to, because Bleacher Report was at the time was owned by like Turner Media and stuff, and they have a bunch of associated entities. And what you had to do is you had to look at all these offensive linemen and basically assign like, a round projection for them that could be used, and you do your little write up and stuff like that. And you would have your rankings of these players, but you'd have to project them for rounds. And I sat down and I'm like, well, I can't just watch these guys and say like, well, like, let's just, I mean, well, he looks like a first rounder. What about that guy? He's not quite as good. Let's say he's a third rounder or something. So I made a little system, and I was helped by a former longtime area scout that became one of the kind of I forgot what his title was whenever he quit, but he was with the Oakland Raiders, and he was the one who kind of showed me this. And what it is, if you look at the deep dig grading scale, it's basically, if you get a 75 for the game, that's just perfectly fine. If everybody got a 75 on the whole offensive line, it means everything's fine. They played baseline football. The offense should be able to run like that, right? You start getting up to like 76, 77. If everybody's in that kind of area, like there's no way that the offense should stall, right? Like they're operating at a pretty high level, because once you get like 78, 79, now you're starting to say this is a guy who probably is looking like at least he's going to get into an NFL camp. If he's got really good measurables and he's playing like that, probably a guy who'll be drafted. You start getting up into like 80, 81, 82, 83. That's a player who's certainly going to be drafted and could go as early as like day 2, right? Start getting up to 84, 85, 86. Now you're looking at round 1 kinds of players, right? The highest I've ever graded over the course of, say, like a 4-game sample, I think was Jake Matthews that year. Joel Bentonio was another guy who I did, where I think he had a 90 over the grades that I had given him. I remember like Larry Warford. I don't think he's in the league anymore. Gabe Jackson, not sure. Maybe Gabe Jackson's still in the league. But yeah, all these guys clearly are back from like the 2013, 2014 class during the time I was doing this. But so that's how the system came to be, right? And so when we look at Kelvin Banks last year, his average grade on the season as a true freshman was a 79.59 average and a 79.26 median, with his highest score coming against Iowa State. He had an 81.85 in that. His worst game of the season, he had a 78.38. And what did I say earlier, man? You start getting up to 77. If everybody's playing that good, no excuses from the offensive coordinator, no excuses from the running back, no excuses from the quarterback, right? He was playing at a level even higher. He was playing basically like a guy who, as a freshman, you'd look at and say, okay, if he's a senior playing like that, he would definitely be at least a priority free agent. I mean, with upside that we've seen all the way to nearly an 82. We start talking about 82, and we're talking like, now if we're talking just upside alone, we're talking about a guy that probably would be drafted on day 2. And we all know that if NFL could draft, linemen that were freshmen, and they could get Kelvin Banks in their organization at age 19. Well, yeah, I mean, he would be like one of the first picks in the whole draft, because they'd be like, well, I mean, he's showing this well as a freshman. It's like, imagine what he's going to be, moving forward. And that's likely what we're going to be able to see. One of the most interesting things about Kelvin Banks is this. As I'm doing this charting, I'll look at disruption, right? Snaps per disruption allowed. And what that is whenever you identify the concept, you understand the responsibilities. Once you understand the responsibilities, you can assign blame or credit to various players for their actions within the framing of those responsibilities. And so you have sacks allowed, quarterback hits allowed, quarterback pressures allowed. So the difference between a hit and a pressure is so a sack, you know what a sack is. A quarterback hit is you allowed the quarterback to get hit. He might have gotten the ball off, but he could have. Sometimes allowing a quarterback hit is just as bad as allowing a quarterback sack. Because if you allow Quinn to get creamed and from his blind side, and he throws a football and it floats, that could lead to a pick six. A quarterback pressure is just where you allow the defender who you're responsible for, or who you became responsible for, to get pressure on the quarterback. There's also run stuffs allowed, which we talked about yesterday when we were talking about like T'Vondre Sweat, what he's really good at: one gapping, shooting up B gap, taking away that play side cutback lane, screwing up the cutback lane for the runner, right? We call that a stuff whenever, and these are stats you're not going to, like, you got to go do it yourself, because it's not like you can find this any, like, no one does this. So it's not intuitive. And a lot of times these guys on defense are, they don't get credit for making these plays because they've made a really good football play, but it doesn't really pop off. It doesn't really pop off to anybody as far as what you see with your eyes. Tackles for losses allowed, just TFLs allowed, and then penalties committed. Okay. So you take all those things and you get the total number of those instances, and you divide you divide that into you divide it in, whatever. You take the number of snaps and you divide it by that number. So Kelvin Banks last year had a total number of quarterback sacks allowed, quarterback hits, quarterback pressures, run stuffs allowed, TFLs allowed, penalties committed. A total was at 13.5. He played 751 snaps, meaning that Kelvin Banks last year allowed a snap or allowed disruption once every 55.6 snaps. Okay, that doesn't mean anything to you whenever I just tell you that number, right? But what if I told you that since I've been doing this whole maniacal effort, that I've graded out the seasons, and I count a season for a player as having at least 100 snaps for Texas along the offensive line, dating back to the times of Cedric Flowers and Marcus Hutchins and Mason Walters and Darius James and Dom Espinosa and like all these other guys, right? There's been 61 of these guys, okay? Kelvin Banks is a true freshman, has the third highest snaps per disruption that I've ever recorded for Texas. The only two that were higher than him were Trey Hopkins, who up until last year was still collecting an NFL paycheck once every 57.1 snaps. Connor Williams in his breakout sophomore season. Remember, Connor Williams was better in his sophomore season than he was in his junior season because he had the ankle injury, right? He had the ankle injury. So that sophomore season was when he was truly elite, and that was the tape that you could ask the scouts. That was the tape that they watched that they really, really liked. Of course, we know Connor Williams now, up and down start in Dallas. From what I can tell, they really like him now in Miami. Now he's made the move to center, right? I think the chat will let us know he's playing center. Kelvin Banks is in third place. So 57.1 for Trey Hopkins, 56.9 for Connor Williams, 55.6 for Kelvin Banks. And then you go down from there for 58 more players. The average snaps per disruption over all of these players over the course of these 61 different tenures, dating back to the year 2011? Was it 2011 or 2012? Is disruption allowed once every 29.1 snaps. Kelvin Banks last year, as a true freshman, allowed disruption once every 55.6 snaps. He was an absolute elite monster. He's a total building block, and he's so good that I was planning on talking about the whole offensive depth chart in this first segment. He's so good that during this first segment, I got to talk about one guy, but we're going to talk about the rest of them, and we'll get Anand Nanduri on as well here in the next hour. We're going to get to it next.
This Orangebloods recruiting flashback takes a look at maybe the best thing Charlie Strong ever produced for the Texas football program. What is that, you ask? Identifying Sam Ehlinger as the quarterback of choice for the 2017 recruiting class and then landing his commitment. For those who might not remember, Ehlinger finished as the nation's number 115th overall prospect in the 2017 Rivals recruiting rankings, the 17th best player in the state of Texas, and the number 5 dual threat quarterback in the country. While Rivals eventually came around on Ehlinger, I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit for ranking Ehlinger as a top 10 prospect in the state and the number 1 quarterback in Texas before he ever received a scholarship offer. SMU was technically the first school to offer Ehlinger, but it's important to note that right after the Mustangs came after him with an offer, Houston head coach Tom Herman followed. Not long after Herman offered, Ehlinger received his first Power 5 offer from Charlie Strong and the Texas Longhorns, an offer Texas fans had been anticipating since a terrific display by Ehlinger at the Texas Elite Quarterback Academy in mid-June. According to Ehlinger, Texas OC Sean Watson told him that they weren't going to offer any other quarterbacks in the 2017 recruiting class. Quote, "They're not going to offer anybody else," end quote, Ehlinger said. 9 days later, the lifelong Texas Longhorn fan, you might have heard about that over the years that followed, committed to the Longhorns. Quote, "Been a Longhorn since day one. I'm truly blessed to say that I'm committed to the University of Texas," Ehlinger announced on Twitter. There wasn't a lot to Ehlinger's recruitment for the better part of the next 16 months as he finished his junior season, competed at the Elite 11 finals going into his senior year, and then went on to begin his senior season in 2016 at Westlake without any distractions. Yet a thumb injury ended his senior season prematurely at Westlake, and it coincided with a horrible 5-7 year for the Longhorns that ended with Strong's dismissal. Suddenly, there was some doubt about his future for a day or two. Almost as soon as Tom Herman was announced as the Texas head coach, he met with Ehlinger to ensure that the player he first offered nearly a year and a half earlier, and before Texas ever offered, knew that he was at the center of all of his plans while on the 40 acres. Following that meeting, Ehlinger locked back into his commitment, and the rest is Longhorns history. Ehlinger was the best part of a 2017 recruiting class that Ehlinger often joked was nicknamed the shit stain class because of the small reputation it had upon its arrival. It ended up being a class that produced 4 NFL players: Ehlinger, Sam Cosmi, Taquan Graham, and Josh Thompson.
All right, we're back, man. I say it's a family friendly show, right? And then I have this obscene graphic over here to my, what is it over here? Yeah, this obscene graphic over here to my left where Lake Travis fell another, what'd you say, Blake? Was it another 1/10 of an inch overnight? This is miserable. So there's that obscene graphic. That what 0.15? Obscene. Make your kids hide their eyes. And on commercial, when I'm getting some wholesome content about a fellow Westlake chaparral, although I do consider myself like an LT parent these days. When I'm watching wholesome content about Sam Ehlinger, a fellow Westlake chaparral, growing up underneath the shadows of the UT Tower and DKR and holding up the, all this, and catch him drops an S-bomb. So I'm sorry to the kids out there. We're going to try and keep it clean. Okay. Thanks again to all you guys commenting. I was just looking at some charts earlier, so I haven't seen all. You got a lot of comments here on the specs comment box. Is that what is that? We still haven't even had a production meeting. I'm just like, I wonder how I'm doing. I've received zero feedback. We haven't had a production meeting. You're flying blind. Yeah, but so yeah, on the specs comment box. Thanks you guys for all the chats. There was fun. So Danny Juarez is saying, unpopular opinion, the Texas offensive line still has room to grow and not top 5 in all of college football, as the media pundits might perceive them to be. Isn't it? But hey, Danny Juarez, I mean, think about it. Isn't that good? The media saying you have a top 5 offensive line. I have been, dude, I used to live stream the Deep Dig back when I lived in my old house over in East Austin. And I'll tell you what, that was decidedly not kid friendly, because do you know what I was doing? I was yelling at the screen. I was taking off my hat. I was throwing my pencil at the screen. I was saying, what in the hell are they doing? Like, what are they even trying? It wasn't so much that the players were bad. I didn't even understand what the concepts were. I didn't even know what they were trying to do. There wasn't even, I told you earlier, once you identify the concept, you can understand what the responsibilities are. You can understand who to give credit to. Whenever you can't even decipher what the concept is, it's like, it's terrifying. And so the fact of the matter is, I don't think your opinion is unpopular that the Texas offensive line still has room to grow. Of course it does. I mean, we're about to start talking about DJ Campbell and, the upside that he presents over at the right guard. But when we look at that same historical comparison with the snaps per disruption allowed that we just talked about, with Kelvin Banks being number 3 all time, behind only, who did I say, Trey Hopkins and Connor Williams in both of their best seasons, DJ Campbell's down as far as his snaps per disruption allowed. What's interesting about DJ Campbell, though, is he allows that disruption, but it's not like, and I don't want these dudes feeling like they're out here catching strays, because they're not. And I hate to always go back to like a Tristan Nicholson or a Marcus Hutchins or these kinds of players. Whenever they allow disruption, those were just the plays where some of the bad stuff they were doing caught up with them. It was like they got a bad grade on the play anyway. And if they allowed disruption, that was just a byproduct of, them getting unlucky, because that was the play where, where it was the true evaluation rep, right? And a lot of these reps aren't evaluation reps. That's an important thing to keep in mind, is that on some of these plays, they'll only bring, 3 guys, 4 guys. There'd be a guard maybe standing around, just making sure that, he has his leverage to, whatever side, just to make sure that, the guy next to him has help. Like, on that play, you get a 0 because it's not bad, but it's not an evaluation rep, right? It's on these evaluation reps where you have a real chance to have disruption occur. And when you talk about DJ Campbell, he allowed a lot of disruption last year. He allowed a lot of tackle. Let's just talk about DJ Campbell, even though I'm trying to go in a better order here. I started with left tackle. I don't want to go over to right guard, but DJ Campbell last year, I guess might as well we're already talking about him. He allowed disruption once every 18.4 snaps. So when you look at everybody else, the only guys who allowed disruption more often than him last year, since I've been doing this, Kent Perkins as a junior, once every 18.3 snaps. Terrell Cuny as a junior, once every 17.8 snaps. Cole Hudson as a freshman last year, once every 17.4 snaps. Kennedy Estelle, remember him as a sophomore, 17.2. Denzel Okafor in his senior season, once every 16.9 snaps. Andre Carrick as a redshirt freshman, so the year before last, once every 15.5 snaps. Tristan Nicholson as a senior, once every 12.9 snaps. Cameron Hughes, if you remember him, as a sophomore, once every 12.9 snaps. And then finally, Tristan Nicholson as a junior, once every 12.7 snaps. So DJ Campbell allowed a lot of disruption last year. But what made up for that, and why you can't just look at the snaps per disruption allowed, why I do the actual grading, is because, well, what about the reps when he didn't allow disruption, right? And if you look at the overall grade that takes into context every single snap of the game, what are his grades? Where's my chart here? The grades by week? Okay, so DJ Campbell played 2 gradable games last year at Kansas and Baylor after Cole Hudson got hurt. He was beginning to kind of come in for Cole Hudson, I think, in that TCU game, even before Hudson got hurt. But you need at least 20 snaps to get a deep dig grade because of the way the algorithm works. So his grades in those games in Kansas, he had a 76.74. In Baylor, he had a 77.09. Both really good games that are above average. As far as his overall average game was what? So those two averages is a 76.92. Hayden Connor, his average was a 76.99. So he was basically a Hayden Connor, even having allowed all that. Imagine if he cleans it up, right? So Danny Juarez, I understand what you're saying here on the specs commenter box, or the specs comment lines, the chat line, the specs chat line, that there's room to grow. Of course there's room to grow. But can we not at least say it's kind of cool that there are pundits out there calling this a top 5 offensive line? I'm not sure I've heard that. But that makes me drop my drink and say, like, oh, holy cow, man. It's like, have we really made it here? Where people in the media are seeing this stuff? That's good. Like, that's good news. It's not an unpopular opinion here on the specs line. We have Juarez again. He's talking about how Christian Jones is a forgotten dude. Yeah, well, he's not forgotten to me. We'll talk about him here in a minute. Let's see. Cody Carpentier saying Texas 38, Alabama 17. Write it in ink. Oh, Cody, you're gonna make some friends here. Cody's gonna be a regular contributor here on the show. Hey, Cody, in the chat, let me know, how did those cheat sheet simulations go earlier for on the YouTube show for the PPR 8.1? Did they go good? Because I'm gonna run a sim here from the one spot here in just a little while. I have Blake. Okay, so Blake is texting me the updates. So, okay. So we do have news about the Colts starters, including quarterback Anthony Richardson. He'll play a quarter and a half to a full half tonight against Philly. Let's go to Prize Picks right now. Then Prize Picks right now. Let's go, everybody. Prize Picks. Let's just go because his over under for passing yards was listed at 66.5 earlier. Let's go ahead and take the more on that one. Sorry to do it in the middle of the show, but this is good content, right? Let's see. Go to NFLP. Is it still, have they swindled us? No, it's still up on the board, 66.5. We'll take the more here with this to pair him and go to receiving yards. What did I like earlier? Oh, this Calvin Austin over 18.5 receiving yards. We'll take the more on both of those. Those are different games. Place entry right there. Some projections have been removed since you selected them. Oh my God. They swindled me with the, are you kidding me? They took off Anthony Richardson. They took him off the board. Oh, you got to be kidding. I was right there. I selected it. I even said I'm doing my work. I'm in the middle of the show, and I didn't even care. I said, I'm good. Look, we're all going to go. Let's go take Anthony Richardson. And now they've been removed. Pass yards. Did they update? Golly, they removed it. How tilting is that? Well, look, at least you can play. Oh, man. At least you could play Anthony Richardson in DFS tonight. That's what I'll be doing. Look, it's not, they're saying on the specs line that it's a scam. It's not a scam. It's what the sports books and the DFS sites, Prize Picks is DFS. It's what they have to do. That kind of information changes the market when there's somebody like me that understands that situation. If Anthony Richardson is playing a quarter and a half to a whole half in this game tonight, for one, it's going to be fun as hell to watch. That's what this show's about, man. It's fun. It's fun as hell, right? Don't we want to watch a big robot of a man run around for a quarter and a half to a full half of football versus maybe some kind of scrubby defensive guys? That guy, man, my co-host on the radio show, the Sirius XM show, Roster Watch, Trash Man, he calls him Optimus Prime. I don't know what that is, but he told me, because I told him that, he looks like a transformer, Anthony Richardson. And he's like, no, he's like Optimus Prime, dude. I'm like, I don't watch these movies, dude. You act like a child. Anyway, so yeah, we have the rest of the offensive line to get to. We got swindled badly on the Anthony Richardson stuff. Blake, good looking out with that. Please, please, please give me the same amount of diligence to the Atlanta starters, right? And we'll and that way we'll know if we can. That way we'll know if we can, because there's some certain things. If I feel like if there's not going to be any Tyler Algier, if there's not going to be any Cordell Patterson, if there's not going to be any Bijan Robinson, then definitely it feels gross to be talking about. But we'd probably look at the Godwin Igwebuike over at 40.5 rushing yards, and also Carlos Washington Jr. His snaps fell a little bit from the week 1 preseason game to the week 2 preseason game, whereas Godwin's went up. But it feels like Washington Jr. is a guy who, if this is going to be an evaluation game, they might want to see more of. I kind of like the over on rushing yards for both those guys. And then, of course, for the passing yards, I think Taylor Heineke, 116.5, looks pretty appealing to me as far as an over there. He's a guy who, here's the thing about Taylor Heineke. He can look good, and he can look good in like a regular NFL season game, right? He can look good for 3 weeks, and then you're just like, all right, well, this will be the week that he turns into a pumpkin. He turns into a pumpkin, and all of a sudden he's super bad. He'll be fine against total scrubs. So I think the over there on him, over on Prize Picks, 116.5. if we find out there is no Desmond Ridder, is that, but see, that's another thing. It's like, we're going to need to get over there immediately and get that done. That Anthony Richardson thing has me on such tilt, man. All right. We have the Specs chat line. Michael, my business says I watch him and I'm old AF. Glenn Keller says, Alex, he looks like a transformer. Friend. Yeah, he looks like Optimus Prime. Alex, nerd. Yeah, well, I don't call him a nerd. I just call him a giant piece of human trash. So yeah, we have all that going on. DJ Campbell, we talked about, that's kind of the book on him. He's at the right guard, though. At the left guard, we have Hayden Connor. And I got some pushback on Orangebloods, because I said just what's interesting about this. So on the starting offensive line, Kelvin Banks left tackle, Hayden Connor left guard, Jake Majors center, DJ Campbell right guard, Christian Jones right tackle. But as far as the two deep, it isn't like every single one of those guys has like some younger dude behind him, right? Do you understand what I mean when I say that? Because it's like on the two deep behind Kelvin Banks is Cam Williams, but on the two deep behind Christian Jones is Cam Williams, and on the two deep behind DJ Campbell is Cam Williams. He'd probably come in. He wouldn't, if something happened at left guard with Hayden Connor. What would likely happen is they'd move DJ Campbell to left guard, put Cam Williams in at right guard, wherever there's there's a lot of familiarity there where he was playing at there in the spring game, right? And a big dude like Cam Williams, those big long arms for a lot of reasons. You like to have those just total people movers if you possibly can on the right side of the offensive line, because offenses are generally pretty right-handed, right? You want the guy who's a little bit more fleet on his feet over on the left side, because he's going to need to be matched up with the left tackle, who's generally going to have the quarterback's blind side and pass protection. So you have Cam Williams, I think, at right guard. So it's like if anything happened to basically anybody on the offensive line, Cam Williams comes in. Think about it. I'm not going to put their names out there, but let's just say something happened at left tackle. What happens? Okay, Christian Jones to left tackle, Cam Williams to right tackle. Okay, what happens if something happens at left guard? DJ Campbell to left guard, Cam Williams to right guard. What happens if something happens at center? Hayden Connor to center, DJ Campbell to left guard, Cam Williams to right guard. What happens if something happens at right guard? Cam Williams to right guard. What happens if something happens at right tackle? Cam Williams at right tackle. So the two deep is Cam Williams. Now, I mean, there are other considerations, but the two deep is Cam Williams. So we got my buddy Anand Nanduri. He's joining us. We're going to talk to Anand about Ohio State. We're going to get back to all the rest of this stuff about the offensive line. We got Tom G. What did Tom G say in the super chat? I'm sorry. I saw Tom G had a question. So he has a standard fantasy football draft on Monday. Will there be a new cheat sheet, or is August 17th the last one? No. So I'm in charge of the PPR cheat sheet and in charge of the Superflex cheat sheet. My business partner, Byron, who's actually invented the Roster Watch cheat sheets, is the one who's in charge of the standard and half-point PPR cheat sheet. And so I'm a little bit more maniacal about my daily updates. Byron is more of a weekly update kind of guy, unless there's really, really big news that breaks. Take, for example, today, the Jerry Jeudy stuff. I mean, we're still waiting to hear about the hamstring, but if it's things like that or somebody big major gets hurt, of course we do the updates just right then, right? But with Byron, he likes to take in the whole preseason stuff, go over all the usage trends, and then just get one big one in. But certainly coming into this weekend, a big draft weekend, there'll be an update either tonight or tomorrow, and then there'll be another update later on next week, unless really, really big news breaks or ADP shift significantly. We're going to talk more about some fantasy football for sure. We'll run those simulations. We got to get to the rest of the. I wanted to do the whole offense. We've gotten through 6 of these guys on the offensive line, and we're already to the point where we got to talk Ohio State. We got to talk. I want to talk CJ Stroud. I want to talk Quinn Ewers. I want to talk Ryan Watts with my guy, my friend Anand Nanduri. Next.
This Orangebloods recruiting flashback focuses on one of the best recruits from the Charlie Strong era, wide receiver Devin Duvernay. Duvernay was one of the top prospects that the Longhorns signed in the 2016 recruiting class, but his pathway to the Longhorns was as unconventional as anyone in that class or almost any other. The number 52 overall player in the country, number 5 player in the state of Texas, and number 8 wide receiver in the country per Rivals, the high 4-star Super Blue Chip had one doozy of a recruitment. Before he attended a Texas Junior Day in February of 2015, he told Orangebloods' Jason Sukumel that the Longhorns were front and center in his recruitment. Quote, "They're in it. I like Texas. Grew up liking Texas," Duvernay said. "When I've been there, I like them. With the new staff, I like what they're doing. I think the program will be back pretty soon." Yet Baylor, the first school to actually offer Duvernay a scholarship, was always a school that had his attention. It also had his brother Donovan's attention as well, as he made the jump to commit to Baylor in September of 2015. 2 months later, Devin joined him, choosing the Bears over Alabama, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. That's right, no Texas among his initial group of finalists. That was pretty much that for Duvernay, as he signed in February of 2016 with the Bears. But Duvernay decided to explore other options after a sexual assault scandal surrounding the Baylor program and the subsequent firing of head coach Art Briles. It was later discovered that Duvernay's national letter of intent was never properly submitted by Baylor, making him immediately open to other programs. After not having the Longhorns among his original finalists, Duvernay signed with the Longhorns in June of 2016. And once Baylor released his brother, he also joined the Longhorns' 2016 recruiting class. When it was all said and done, Baylor's loss turned out to be one hell of a gain for the Texas football program, who added one of the best receivers in school history.
Football with friends. It's fun as hell, man. Dude, we got my guy on, Anand Nanduri. You probably know him from the stuff that he does on Player Profile, the decision point stuff. If you've watched any of my content from the last 2 NFL drafts, you've seen Anand there doing it with me. Anand, how the hell are you doing, brother?
Alex, good to see you, man. Excited to talk about Ohio State, and more so excited to tell Texas fans that from the outside, from somebody that follows a different program, you might have to bring back the Texas is back moniker, because they're doing it big, man.
All right, dude. Hey, man, the chat, the Specs chat line is going to be super pumped to hear that from you on it. Do you want to just give? Because here's the thing, I was going to kind of give an intro about who you are and stuff like that and everything. But last time I talked to you, there was some stuff with work. You were like, look, you were moving around to some new. I don't know if you're even allowed to talk about where you work these days, or like what it is you're doing. Like, tell them where they can find you, like what it is you do, a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I from Ohio, Columbus, born and raised. Went to Miami, Ohio. Obviously, diehard Buckeye fan, as Alex has told y'all. But I started out in corporate finance. Did not think that football would be my job by any means. And I was just miserable one day, started applying to stuff. And I applied to a job in the league finance office for the NFL. Came back and offered me a different job in the salary cap department. So started doing that for about 2.5 years. Then they decided to kind of outsource all that. So I moved to Chicago and took a job with MGM. And then there will be a sportsbook partner soon named. Can't quite say it yet, but in about a week or two, there will be.
You guys are so secretive about all this sports book stuff.
It's regulated, bro. When are we going to get Texas live?
Dude, don't even get me started, man. it's like the one thing, if I could get rid of the heat, if I could get rid of just how bad the heat is, and if I could get sports betting legalized here, man, I would have no complaints, man. I live in the most beautiful place in the world, but man, those two things really, really grind on me. But yeah, so Anand, he's been doing this a super long time, and he's got a lot of great insights. I was telling him I met you back at the NFL draft at the Draft House back in Las Vegas. Then we were together again at the Draft House in Kansas City, out there having a bunch of fun, going and seeing the sites and everything else. And of course, talking a lot about college football and just for the content, but also just, it's funny. We get off air talking about this stuff for 8 hours on day 2, and we get done and we just sit down and talk more football with each other. It's just so fun, man. It's like, yeah.
That's what we do, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of the nature of the show. I wanted to ask you about a couple things. Okay. And I want to play a game with you where I don't really know much about the Ohio State defense, but there are, I mean, I know some things about the Ohio State offense, but I want to ask you just to rank the top, just say the top 5 players on offense, and then tell me who you just think the top 3 players on defense are. Because I think that top 5 players on offense question might be hard to answer given some of the circumstances, or maybe it's not. I don't know. But so like, I just wanted to throw that out so I can give you some time to kind of think about it when I give you some of these other ones. But so here we are. It's a Texas based show where we talk about a lot of Texas adjacent stuff. What is your book on what do you think about Quinn Ewers?
I think he is everything that you want in a college quarterback. And there are some jobs that are just different. You know, if you are the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, you're expected to do things that, you know, they just don't ask you to do as the Detroit Lions quarterback. You're the face of a franchise. You are the head of a multi-billion-dollar brand. And that's what you commit to when you commit to Texas. And there are coaches that Texas has had, Charlie Strong among them, that just didn't understand the gravity of what that position means to a program. Quinn grew up there. He gets it. He's one of you. He's not surprised by the expectations that come with playing quarterback in Texas. The only question I have whatsoever with him is, will he be healthy? Because when he's healthy, that team should have beaten Bama. And I say that as a neutral party observer that thought going into that game that Bama should win by 20, at least. And last year we saw all of the work that goes into building a program the way that Sark's built it. You can win a game multiple ways. Alabama didn't win that game because they scored 50. They won that game because Quinn got hurt. If he stays out there and is the quarterback that he's capable of being, Texas is absolutely a national title contender. They're not just a Big 12 contender. They're not just a playoff contender. They can take the whole thing down.
And the thing was, it was like, man, I was getting so many texts from all of my friends, and like, but you know, have you met Byron, my business partner?
Yeah, I mean, I've met him virtually. I don't think I've
right.
Met him
Just like Byron, you know, who's just, you know, he went to, like, I met Byron when I was at Texas, right? He doesn't follow it. You know, the games come on, he turns the TV on. He's like, all right, let's see the Longhorns this year. He's more like a normie, right? He isn't like these people in the Specs chat line right now, just or like you are with Ohio State, taking your photos next to Marvin Harrison Jr. at practice. Dude, that's so cool that they allow that. They would never allow that at Texas. It's just it's so wild that they allow you guys out there all the time. It's awesome.
It's weird because that's a really new thing. They hadn't had open practices to the public in like 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And you know, it's rare that, you know, you get opportunities like that, but I mean, they allowed it this year, and I'm assuming they're going to allow it going forward. So that was a crazy experience. But yeah, I can only imagine. I do not think there's enough money that someone wouldn't spend in Austin, Texas, to have that same experience. So I don't think you could do that there.
Yeah, well, so Byron, you know, he just texts me, and he's like calling me up. He's like, dude, like, why didn't you tell me? We got this guy. Like, he's amazing. He's just like, you know, he's not a guy that throws out compliments quite like that, you know, so easily. And, you know, you get texts from everybody, you know, your mom and your dad, they're like, oh, the Texas found their quarterback. And then of course, you know, of course, disaster strikes in the game. And it felt like the whole year was just trying to get back up to that sort of high and that level of euphoria that the fan base had, you know, before that play down there heading down into the south end zone. But, yeah, man. So I think that, you know, there's excitement about Quinn, but I do think, like I told you at the draft, I think he needs to go out and do it. I mean, he still needs to go do it, you know, and so that's what people are banking on. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. So I think Texas is in a weird spot. They're in the same spot that I think Michigan was in about a year and a half ago, where now not only are you the favorite in your conference, because when you're not the favorite in your conference, when you're recruiting basically to beat an Oklahoma, when you're Michigan recruiting to beat an Ohio State, when you're Penn State recruiting to beat an Ohio State, your team forms a certain identity, and you're not recruiting necessarily to beat the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world. Sark came in there and from the beginning said, we're going to recruit to beat Georgia and Alabama out there right now. Because if we're going to do this in the first 3-4 years of this program, We need the guys on the O and D line that may not exactly be ideal Big 12 fits. We don't care. Our goal isn't to chase down Oklahoma. Our goal is to chase down Alabama and Georgia and win a national title. It's a different mentality that these guys have when they come from programs in the South and understand what it's like to build like that. Urban did that when he came to Columbus. I think Sark's doing that at Texas right now. It's just an entirely different world than it is trying to build to win the Big 12. Because as much as it pains anybody to hear this that's a Texas fan, winning the Big 12 is not the end goal. And I know it hasn't happened yet, and I know that people are upset about that. But the goal is to win a national title. The goal is to go back to 05-06. It's to be right where you were with Colt McCoy in 09. It's not to be a team that can win the Big 12 and miss out on the playoff going 10-3 every year. So I think the way that they've built things, especially in Austin, given all the pushback that's coming out there, it's tough. It's really, really hard to do things the way that Sark's doing them, because you are going to have the last 2 years where people are like, could have squeezed a little more out of this and gotten us one of these Big 12 titles. But I think this is their year, and I think that they're firmly pointed in the right direction.
That's so funny you said on him, because what Mac Brown would say, and fans are so fickle, because what Mac Brown would say is like, look, man, like it's a 10-win season. It's a 10-win season. And fans are like, we don't care. We don't care. Like, and look, over the last decade, they would have crawled through glass to get to 10-win seasons. It's funny how whenever you put it in you frame it in a way of saying, well, when Texas is operating optimally as it should, it's like, it's weird to say because we've been in this desert, but you get to a point where fans and analysts and people such as yourself that are outside viewers of the program, close viewers of college football and the NFL, say like, well, it's kind of like the way fans felt back then about Mac. It's kind of true. It's like, that's just, when you get to a certain level, that isn't even good enough itself. So it's a wild thing, especially to consider right now. Did you think, now just one more thing about another ex-Ohio State guy, have you heard that Ryan Watts is up to 6'3", 213 pounds?
Jeez,
at camp today,
man.
at camp right now.
That's another. He's going to be really special. He's going to be really, really special.
He looks, and I know you didn't really get to see him, quite as much or anything, but yeah, man, he's certainly Texas. It feels like Texas was happy to get those, whatever you would call those. I don't know if Ohio State fans, like, did Ohio State fans think that Ryan Watts was table scraps? Like,
no, Ryan was a big recruiting get, and all things considered, obviously they would love to have him. It wasn't just we have a surplus, go somewhere else. I think, people really wanted him here. It's just, there are only so many spots for people to start. And with the transfer portal era, the way that it is, people are going to make those moves. And, there are a lot of people in Columbus right now that think that if Quinn never reclassified, that he's probably still in Columbus. I don't know how true that is, given, you're always going to have some pull to want to go take the program that you grew up rooting for back to the national championship and win one. Like that desire never goes away, regardless of where you commit. And so the fact that he had an opportunity to do it, and, Ryan kind of falls in that same boat, it's one of those scenarios where I'm not upset that they left. I'm really happy for both of them. And I hope that Ryan turns into the player that he can be, because what he can be is a really, really, really special difference maker, and a guy that really can turn the tide for what we've seen from the Texas defense in huge games. I
didn't know that you were so big in Canada, Anand. Jeez, look at this. You're a legend and an icon, according to Toronto Dave. Well, good for you, man. You're big in Canada for sure. All right, so what are your expectations? Rookie year, CJ Stroud. Just another kind of topic here before. Oh no, I actually have two more topics before I play my Ohio State top 5 game with you.
All right, let's do it.
CJ Stroud. What are your expectations year one?
I think the Texans are going to win more games than their win total, which is 6.5. And I don't think that that's necessarily a reflection of what CJ is going to become as a quarterback. I just think everyone's underestimating how good that offensive line is going to become and how much they can lean on the Dameon Pierce in the run game and kind of give CJ time to progress, because he's going to fall victim to what all Ohio State quarterbacks fall to, all Alabama quarterbacks, Clemson, Texas, any of these schools, where most of the time that you go out there, your talent is just so much better than everybody else's that you're allowed to get away with things. We saw this with Justin early on in his career with the Bears. You never have to really go through and make the big boy NFL reads, because Jackson Smith and Jigba is running wide open. Xavier Worthy is going to be running wide open for Quinn this year. That they're not forced to make those decisions until you get to an Alabama or an Oklahoma or a Notre Dame or an Ohio State, any of those teams that actually have levels of talent that are even close to yours. Do you really get to find out what your quarterback is? So I think that's TBD, but I think he will impress people this year, because he is probably the most accurate quarterback we've ever had at Ohio State, as cerebral as they come. And then, you saw biggest game of his career against Georgia. We saw what he's really capable of.
Yeah. And then also just, I thought in that first preseason game, people were just kind of like, that was one of the first ones. It was on a Thursday night. Like, you know what I mean? And a lot of people saw there was the interception, and it felt like maybe people got a little bit of a bad, I don't know, just, you know how it is on it. Things stick with people. They're like, oh, that was a terrible read. Trashman was down there at the joint practices with the Dolphins last week.
Yes.
And he was saying, like, he's like, to me, it's like the ball placement and the touch. It was still the CJ Stroud that I saw in college. So I mean, it's I think he'll be fine. They'll probably, with all these rookies, there's going to be some growing pains and stuff. This is actually a great question that JD has in the chat about how you'd rank these guys in terms of talent: JSN, Harrison Jr., Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Abuka. But before we did get that, I think that'll like spoil my question, right? Who are the top five? Who are the top five players on the Ohio State offense?
I think you start and end with Marv as one. I don't
okay,
think.
All right. So let's talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. then, because I wish Blake, go on Anand's Twitter and look and just scroll through it like about a week or so. How long was it back then?
Probably 2-3 weeks ago.
Like, scroll back like 2 or 3 weeks and can you find a picture of him and Marv that you could put up on the screen? This guy, I mean, this guy's a beast. But yeah, just talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. Do you think he has top 5 NFL draft upside?
Yeah, I mean, he's the best wide receiver I've ever seen at Ohio State. And we haven't even seen year 3 yet, which is crazy because I know who we're talking about. I know we're talking about Olave and Wilson. We're talking about Smith and Jigba. We're talking about Terry McLaurin, Michael Thomas, a lot of these guys that have been super duper productive NFL players.
How is Brian Hartline not a head coach?
I don't know.
He just wants to stay there until the perfect opening comes. Is that what it is?
I think it's one of those things where maybe behind the scenes, I haven't heard anything about this, but my assumption is at some point Ryan Day is going to want to try his hand at the NFL. And I think that's kind of the under the table deal that's been made, is Brian will eventually be Ohio State's head coach when that time comes, kind of in the way that Luke Fickell was when Tressel left, except for, Urban Meyer became available, which doesn't happen very often.
Right.
But I mean, Marv is everything that you want in an NFL receiver. I mean, I haven't seen anybody that came out this complete since AJ Green. Julio was probably a little bit more of a freak in terms of athleticism and size. But AJ Green did everything. And I mean, for the people that are younger, he was everything that he was in the NFL at Georgia and then some. But I mean, he's in that class of guys where you're just like, yeah, man, this can't be a real football player. I've never seen anything like him.
Is it because he's so tall and he can move like that? Is that it? Is
he's
it like
his? I mean, most of us watched his dad. He's his dad. The difference is he's 6'4" instead of 5'11".
Right.
It's just the body control is ridiculous. I mean, he was basically trained to be a wide receiver since he was born. You can't teach a lot of the stuff that he just does instinctively. But I mean, we've had some crazy ones at Ohio State, but he's right at the top of that list, at least of the guys that I had the pleasure watching.
Okay, and then just one other quick thing: have you heard anything, or have you just you're probably on some kind of Ohio State message boards like the Orangebloods or those. So like, does he ever talk about about what his 40 time is, or about what people
No,
think it is, or they
no.
project it? You haven't heard anything about this?
He said that he wants to, if I remember right, I think he said he wants to run high 4.3s, low 4.4s.
Oh, geez. Wait till we're at the Content House this year, on.
That's going to be a fun one, man.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
this draft class is already so much fun, and we haven't even gotten to their junior, senior years.
My God. All right. Who's the second best player on the Ohio State offense?
I think that I'll go in terms of most important as opposed to best.
Okay.
I think the second most important player is Cade Stover. He's the tight end.
He's the tight end. Okay.
Yeah. We call him Farmer Gronk because he grew up on a farm. And I mean, he's already a Patriot. You can go. There's never been anybody we've had that's more of a New England Patriot than he is.
Right.
But blocking skills are really good. He is absolutely a team leader. And, when he left that Georgia game, you saw they had to funnel more targets to Harrison immediately because running backs couldn't find the lanes that he would open up for him. He's just crucial across the board for everything that Ohio State's able to do. All the tight ends in that room are, but he's clearly the best of them. Going down that list, the third best player in terms of, I'm going to ignore the O-line because that's a work in progress in terms of, those
I'm
five.
surprised because I've heard the kid from Texas. Is it Donovan Jackson? I've heard people talk about him like
Donovan Jackson is excellent. I'm gonna ignore the O-line because I think that's so much more of you need to find the right five as opposed to this guy is more important than that guy.
Got it. All right.
And there's obviously issues. Josh Simmons transferred in from San Diego State to play tackle. We think Josh Fryer might be the other tackle. There's some stuff going on there in terms of still figuring that out. So just in terms of skill positions, obviously 3 is going to be a mecca. He's a freak. You could argue he's the second best receiver in the country. It's ridiculous. Heartline, again, is just recruiting the freakiest of the freaks.
And developing them.
Right? I mean, all 3 of the freshmen that were there, whether it was Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, Noah Rogers, Bryson Rogers, they all look like redshirt sophomores. Like they're ready to go to the league tomorrow. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. I don't know how that happened, but they keep finding these guys somewhere. And then from there, I think you got there.
There you go. There's Anand with the board. Look at
Anand Marv.
You got that eye. You're wearing that Ohio State ice, man. You're out there looking good, dog. You got a lot of drip.
We did the whole thing at the draft last year. We'll do that again, obviously. But I mean, I think from there you look at, TreVeyon Henderson. Yeah.
Now, is he healthy now?
He is.
He was hurt.
He was hurt.
Was he a little hurt last year?
He was definitely hurt last year and banged up, and kind of him and Jackson last year were both kind of the guys that we were just waiting. Can they get back? Can they get back? They just didn't. And I think they tried to play him a little bit too early and got into trouble. Running back depth got into trouble with some of the receiver depth after Marv. But I mean, he's special if he puts it all together. That's just one of these ridiculous weapons that they've got to do whatever they want with. I mean, it's crazy.
Season, people were talking in the Devy leagues and stuff. He was one of the first players off the board and all. People were thinking, let's just get this guy in our Devy leagues as a freshman. It's like, who cares? And we'll just wait him out. It's like,
I mean, it's kind of nuts just the fact that they have that there, and then that fifth guy is kind of up in the air right now. There are plenty of people that would argue that it is Julian Fleming. There are plenty of people that would argue it could be Jaden Ballard, who's much more in that Devin Smith kind of line of wide receiver. You've got people that would argue that it's either Mayan Williams or Evan Pryor in the running back room.
You haven't mentioned the quarterback yet, and that's the thing on it, is that you haven't. I wanted to do this because I knew that there were going to be guys that you mentioned before the player that's going to have to distribute the ball to all these guys.
Yeah.
So that's what I was actually hoping that this would happen, and I could lead you to this spot. You've been to practices. What's going on with the quarterbacks? What's their names off the top of my head?
Kyle McCord, Devin Brown are the two guys that are actually out there.
And then was McCord?
Kyle McCord. Yeah.
Kyle McCord. Okay. And so I know McCord was definitely a Was he
Yep.
was a 5-star? Because I've seen his
McCord
highlights.
was the 5-star. Funnily enough, he was Marv's quarterback in high school.
Okay.
And Marv was the 4-star among those two.
Okay. So we have so Tom G's saying OSU is what I think is the number one wide receiver room in the country. What about the QB play? And it's like JD saying I'm hearing some buzz on Devin. Well, here, I mean, you got the guy here to ask. He's been at practices here in the last week or two. Like, how do they look? Like, who's going to start?
See, the thing is, Alex, I don't think it's going to matter. And everybody's up in arms about it. People are freaking out about it. And they were freaking out about it when CJ was announced the starter. They were freaking about it when Dwayne was announced the starter. They were freaking out about it when Justin was announced the starter. I don't think it's going to matter early on. And I think that this is going to carry into the season. Right? And like it's going to be early in the season where we actually get an answer, because you have that week 4 game at Notre Dame at night. And that's trial by fire for 2 new tackles. That's trial by fire for a new quarterback you're breaking in. So I think, ultimately speaking, I've maintained the same thing, is I think Kyle McCord will take the opening snap basically no matter what. And it would take a Herculean effort from Devin Brown to beat him out for the job. Now, we're hearing that Devin Brown may be putting in the effort to actually do that, which is a good thing. You don't want a quarterback job given to anybody. You don't want it to be a, oh, hey, here's the job because you stayed for 2.5 years. So I love that they actually gave him an opportunity to win it. They have been giving Devin Brown an opportunity to win that job. It has been 50-50 reps in practice. I was there. They are actually giving him a shot to win the job. It's not just competition for the sake of saying there's a competition. There is an actual quarterback competition there going on right now. But I do think that the first throw is going to be made by Kyle. What is it? 2 weeks, a week and a half from now. But I mean, I think they're going to give Devin opportunities in that same game against Indiana. That point spread's like 30 points. So if they're not if they're not ahead by 20 at half, that would be a sign of other things that are concerning. But it'll play itself out in those first 3 games. But again, I don't know how much you're actually going to glean in terms of your national title hopes, your Big Ten title hopes from games against Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, and Indiana.
Got it. There's no chance they employ some idiotic platoon of 2 quarterbacks to start the season. Is there? Are they going to do that?
I mean, I would assume that Devin will play some, but I don't know what that rotation will.
It won't be like in one series, out one series. I can't say.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think it'll be first half, second half, and then maybe for Youngstown State they flip them second half, first half. But I mean, I still expect that it will be Kyle.
This could be fun for that fan base, man. If we had something like that going on around here, we'd have things to talk about all day, every day, brother. So, I mean,
oh man,
those are some wild times when we get into that kind of quarterback roulette. Okay, and then just look, you don't have to rank it. Like, just who on defense do people need to know about? Like, if we're watching these Ohio State games, clearly, like for me, I've watched the offensive guys much more closely, just because my job is I'm a football analyst for Texas and some of the guys they play, but nationally, I watch the offensive guys because it's my job to know who the fantasy studs are and stuff. So I get familiarized with the defenders during the draft process but it's like during the season, I don't follow it. So who on defense should people keep an eye on this year?
So I think your D linemen that you're looking at are JT Tuimoloau, who was number 1 recruit in the country.
Can you spell it?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, really? All right. I don't think you have to, man. It's
yeah. I mean, but I mean, from auto correcting 97 times last year, especially in that Penn State game. JT is on one side, and then the other side is Jack Sawyer, another 5-star defensive end from Columbus. And then in the middle is a defensive tackle that hasn't got a bunch of press outside of our fan base, named Michael Hall, who I think will probably end up being around 1 guy this year. Just interior disruptor. They didn't really use him a ton last year, or as much as they could. I know he was hurt a little bit of the year, but when they got those 3 guys together, that was really special as a package. Jack Sawyer has flashed, but hasn't really putting that together. But whereas JT and Michael are 2 really, really special players on that end. And then on the back end, it's Sonny Styles, man. obviously they're two established linebackers in Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers, but the back end it's Sonny Styles, who is a sophomore, also from the Columbus area, but he is built freakishly similar to Isaiah Simmons, who I know was making headlines for not the greatest reasons today.
Yeah, we've heard his name today.
Yep. And then the corners will be Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock. Denzel's probably going to get some day 1, day 2 consideration next year. But Sonny Styles, I think, is kind of the breakout player that no one outside of the program has really talked about.
But who's the one? But who's the one who you think is like the guy? Like who's going to be the headliner from Ohio State on?
It's going to be JT Tuimoloau.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right, cool. So we got that. One more thing about Ohio State. Siege was on here yesterday. I made a bet with him. Notre Dame, Ohio State. The early line on that, I think, was Ohio State -7. I told him I was taking Ohio State versus his Notre Dame. He called me a total donk. He's usually Siege has had a good record against me as far as these off the cuff bets I've made with him. What do you think? You probably don't know much about Notre Dame, but is that a game that you've thought about? Do you think I'm an idiot for taking Ohio State -7?
No, I think if the Ohio State team that we saw, on that practice field shows up, that line is probably closer to 9 or 10. But again, on the road, showing up at ND, breaking in 2 new tackles, breaking in a new quarterback, there is obviously potential for trouble. I mean, it's any elite team that goes on the road, especially in probably, I can't remember a game that's been more hyped than that in South Bend in a hot minute. But no, I think, that is kind of the right price to buy Ohio State at. If it was 9.5 or 10, I'd be a little more concerned. But I mean, dude, Notre Dame's good. And I know everybody wants to go back to last year, and it's, oh, you beat them at home, and then they lost to Marshall, and they looked ugly early in the year.
Yeah.
Look at how that team came together, and now you have a legitimate quarterback. Tyler Buckner's at Bama. Sam Hartman is your quarterback, and we've seen what he did at Wake Forest. I mean, that's a real team that is absolutely a real threat. They are a live dog. They can beat Ohio State. And if Ohio State doesn't clean up some things, and find some unity early on, they probably will beat Ohio State.
It's funny. I got Rodolfo in the chat saying I keep calling you Anwar. It's totally my Anwar Richardson's on this channel with us, so he's always the one on here with me. So I start saying on. This looks like crazy.
Tails off. It's all good.
All right. So again, Anand Nanduri here with us. I think it's Nanduri NFL on Twitter, right? At Nanduri NFL. Make sure and go give him a follow there. I just have a couple more quick questions. You got to tell these people they're Texas fans. They want to take Bijan Robinson on their fantasy team. What do you think? All right, like how early is too early? I know that you and Matt Kelly might have some bad news for him. Was that on your podcast with Matt that I heard you saying that maybe Bijan's going a tiny bit too early? Do you want to warn these guys off? Just kind of tell, like, where are you comfortable taking Bijan Robinson right now?
This is nothing to do with Bijan the player. We love Bijan the player. The problem is Atlanta is going to run the ball 597,000 times this year, which is great. But in terms of fantasy points, we want him catching the ball. We want those targets as opposed to actual rushes. He's an incredible player. I would be thrilled if I could get him at the top of round 2, but he keeps going in the middle of round 1, which is just too rich for me, given the fact that you're talking about a rookie and a guy that that we love, absolutely love, and we know that offense is going to run through. The question is, how many targets is he going to get? And from that perspective, Atlanta just doesn't throw the ball enough to get the targets that we want him to get. And I think long-term, he will be a really great dynasty asset. He's going to be he'll be really, really good this year. It's just there are players you can draft with less risk at the 105, 106 where he's going right now.
Yeah, I think so too. For me, it's like I bake in the fact that he's still Bijan. And even when I do that, I have a hard time clicking him before I click even Nick Chubb.
Yeah. Great player though.
Yeah. Great player. Anand's a great guy. Oh, hold on. Wait, we got to ask you before I let you go, Anand, you've been so great with your time. Yeah. You did not give your hunting versus fishing take yet. Do you even like either one? And if you have to choose either, which one, which you like better? Like one's got to go. It's like the internet meme, right?
Okay. So one's got to go. The thing that's tough for me is growing up in the Midwest, I don't have the option to do both year round like you guys do in Texas.
Yeah, you don't.
So like it may be the cop out answer of all cop out answers, but it's hunting in the winter, fishing in the summer, because I've never really done the other in the opposite season for any reason. So I mean, if you catch me between, you know, September and March, I'm probably hunting. And if it's between, you know, April and August, I'm probably fishing.
Yeah, for me it's tough. But you can always go and like out on one of those frozen, like, do the lakes freeze up out there? You go to the frozen lake, make a little.
I mean, up here is tough, but yeah, if you go to like Minnesota, rural Ohio, you definitely can.
I've always wanted
go
to do
ice
that,
fishing.
Man. Get in one of those little shacks, man. Take a couple beers out there. You would take that bottle of Jameson.
Oh, absolutely, no question, no question. Ice fishing's fun, man. I've only done it a couple of times, but ice fishing's fun.
Anand Nanduri, you're the best, brother. Can't wait to see you again in person, man. All my love to you and yours. Thanks you so much for coming on. And everybody, please go give him a follow on Twitter at Nanduri NFL. And we're going to get back to talking Texas offensive line, the depth chart, all that next.
This Orangebloods recruiting flashback takes a look back at the single lowest rated recruit of the 2020 recruiting class and one of the 5 lowest rated position players that the Longhorns have signed in the last 5 recruiting cycles. That's right, I'm talking about senior All-American linebacker Jalen Ford, a lowly 3-star prospect who ranked as the number 127th ranked player in the state of Texas per Rivals. Yeesh. Ford's recruitment began in earnest in the spring of 2019 when he picked up 16 offers by the end of May, including Power 5 offers from the likes of Kansas, Minnesota, Utah, and Texas Tech. Still, the recruiting services paid him no attention. After taking unofficial visits to Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Hawaii, Ford took his first official visit to Texas Tech in late May. Quote, "This is my only official visit for the summer," Ford said at the time. "I'm looking to visit Washington State and Utah early in the season, so maybe I'll be ready around September, then make a decision and announce my commitment shortly after that." True to his word, the trip to Utah proved to be a game changer for Ford as he committed to the Utes on October 8th of his senior season, right after taking his official visit to see the Utes. Very quietly, though, the Longhorns became involved in his recruitment a month later. After Texas assistant coach Tim Beck visited Ford at his high school, Tom Herman called him a week later to offer a scholarship. Ford did a good job of keeping the news of Texas's interest under wraps. In fact, in early December, Ford told Orangebloods that he hadn't even been talking to the Texas staff. At the time, Lone Star was alive in the Texas State playoffs, and Ford said he wanted to remain focused on his team's playoff run. Once Lone Star season came to an end on December 14th, Ford began to focus on his upcoming decision, and he finalized the decision to commit to Texas a week later. "It was really right before I was going to sign," Ford said. "At that point, football is over. I finally had some time to sit down and think. The day I didn't sign, the first day of signing day, I had to call Utah and Texas. It was a little bit chaotic." On December 23rd of 2019, Ford committed to the Longhorns, and the rest is Texas football history.
All right, football with friends, man. It's fun as hell. Thanks so much to Anand Nanduri for coming on and talking some Ohio State and just everything, man. It's always so good to see Anand, man. Love that guy. Make sure and follow him on Twitter too at Nanduri NFL. So listen, I told you guys I made a big promise. I told you guys in the Specs chat line that and while I'm plugging stuff, if you guys could please click that you like and you smash that subscribe button. If I'm gonna be doing this, I need to start learning how to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Do it. Like the video and subscribe. It's right down there. Do it now. Maybe that'll work. I told you guys earlier that I got a random email about somebody said, they said that this is the cake recipe, right? It's the cake recipe that they sent me. And so if you guys just want to take this down for later, remember this, because this is like the best cake that I've ever had. My wife made this. Okay. Here it is. 2 cups flour, 2 cups sugar, 1 teaspoon soda, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon salt, mix together and set aside. Okay. Then this is real easy. Bring to a boil 1 stick of butter, 4 tablespoons of cocoa, Hershey's natural unsweetened, 1 cup water, half cup oil, not olive. Pour over other ingredients and stir thoroughly. Add 2 eggs and 1 cup of buttermilk. Stir thoroughly. Bake at 375 for 30 minutes or until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. Mix 4 tablespoons cocoa, 5 tablespoons milk, and 1 stick of butter until the butter melts, 1 box of powdered sugar, and stir well. It will be somewhat runny. Pour over cake while it is still hot from the oven. Call if you need help. Enjoy. I love you. And I love you guys too, man. So, but that lady doesn't really love me. She was sending it to somebody else. Anyway, remember this. Remember this. Okay? You can come back to the episode. If you want a cake, that is delicious. Much better than Charlie Strong's cake. He said that cake was baked. That cake had I read you that. I read you out read you out the ingredients for that. It's like 1 can tuna, one dash of the Apollo last dab sauce. Nobody's even gotten me to do this yet. You guys haven't dared me in a daring enough way. Someone needs to look, I got the last dab sauce. I got the rich people fancy Ritz crackers, the most elegant. I mean, this is for fancy high society people. Ritz crackers, always delicious. We got some hunting versus fishing talk to get to. We have the rest of the offensive line to get to. There were a couple of other things. Oh, Jay Ward, thank you. I certainly appreciate everybody here listening. Well, I didn't see much breakfast talk after the very beginning, so we'll get to more of that here if you guys have it. But I know that I did promise the cake recipe. Oh, the Chris Del Conte takeaways. Okay, I'm just going to do this so I don't forget, because one of the takeaways is something that I am going to just save for tomorrow's show, because tomorrow I think we're just going to do a AAA Friday is what we're going to call it. Hashtag AAA Fridays. Ask Alex anything. I'll come in here. I won't have my list of topics, my list of great topics like favorite berries, one breakfast you might like, hunting versus fishing, et cetera, et cetera. My son thought a great topic would be to talk about where was Hershey's invented. I told him I don't think that's going to go over very well, but I did bring it up. But it'll be a AAA Friday tomorrow, so you can bring your topics. And, of course, you can always email me, alex@rosterwatch.com. But, listen, the one thing about the Del Conte thing that stood out to me was just right at the very beginning when he had all the liquor bottles back behind him, right? And he said, Anwar said something like, something about sneaking some liquor, something like that. And he's like, oh, something like back when you're a kid, you kind of pour some in there, right? If you drink some of your parents' liquor stash and you put some like water in there to fill it back up, so it looks like you didn't take any. For one, we did that one time at my buddy Cody's house. To his mom, we found some and we were probably sophomores or juniors in high school. But we don't know what's what with the liquor shelf. And his mom had this bottle. It was amaretto, right? And it's we took it. We took a little bit of amaretto and drank it. We put some water back in there to kind of fill it up to the level it was at. Dude, his mom, it was literally that night. I guess she drank the amaretto all the time, because that night, once she got home, she stormed into his room and said, you guys poured water in my amaretto. She was like, geez, if you're going to drink it, just drink it, but don't ruin all the rest of it for me. And it's just, I'll never forget how tilted she was. She's like, if you're going to drink it, just whatever, but man, but don't now you've ruined it. I can't even drink any more of this. The other thing, just kind of adjacent to that, would be at my other friend Sandy's house, right? When we were growing up, and he lived with his single dad, and his dad was a big fan of these bourbons and these whiskeys and all this. Again, we don't even know what these things are, right? But what he did. Listen to how sneaky this dad was. This is going to be something that I use, and you dads out there could use this thing. Okay. So there was a whole picture walking into this room, right? Like, and there's a bar in the corner, and there's all these bottles of liquor, right? But you walk up close to him and you realize the level where the liquor goes up to, there's a series of like little lines that are drawn like in Sharpies, right? And I guess what you take it as meaning is that, like, okay, well, at a certain point in time, the liquor was up to this level, and he put a line, and then he like drank some, and then it came down some more, and he put a line there, so he knows where the liquor level is, so he knows if his kids drank it, right? But listen to what he did. He laid a trap for us. He had one right in the middle that looked like some kind of, I forgot what don't even remember. Oh, do you know, it was some kind of like coconut rum or something that would look really good, like a 15-year-old boy, right? And we looked at it, and it didn't have a line marking the level, right? And so we gave it. We were just like, all right, we'll sneak a couple little glasses of this. His dad comes home, bangs in the door. He's holding the bottle, and he said, like, we said, like, what? And he goes, what are you doing? Drinking my rum. We said, we didn't drink your rum. He takes it right in front of us, turns it upside down, holds it upside down, and on the bottom, he had drawn the line. He'd drawn the line on the bottom side of it. So when you turn it upside down, you knew where the level was. And we were such dumb idiots that we just noticed that there wasn't a line on the top, and he laid this whole trap for us with the line at the very bottom. That's a hack for a dad. Woo, he got us good. All right. You guys want to talk more about the offensive line? All right. Let's go to the depth chart, because we've talked about how the depth chart is basically Cam Williams as the second offensive line, right? But that's not the way that the depth chart's going to look. But we did go through, if anything were to happen at any given position, that Cam Williams is going to be the guy that is going to need to step up and, he's going to step up. If there's an injury at any position, Cam Williams enters the lineup. And we talked about the different permutations. But if you just look at kind of the backup left guard, it feels like, based on what I had heard from practices dating back to right before they switched over to this game week stuff earlier this week, and I started doing the show and everything, what it was Hayden Connor was getting some work with the second team offensive line in front of Connor Robertson as a center. So Hayden Connor has the ability to play center, right? I also heard that Cole Hudson was getting some work, but not nearly as much as Hayden Connor. Now, when Hayden Connor went to go work with the second group, what they did is they brought Cole Hudson in to play left guard. And so for now, what I'm doing is I'm putting Cole Hudson behind Hayden Connor at left guard, with the understanding that Hayden Connor is what I'm viewing as the second center. Although Cole Hudson, there's been some signal that Cole Hudson might also be getting some stuff at center. And I'm open to the idea that Cole Hudson could indeed be a guy that they're looking at long-term for the center position, because we know that, he's a sophomore. Jake Majors is a junior. They're looking to get bigger along the offensive line. Jake Majors his time may be limited if they really, really are. And if being next to a guy like DJ Campbell, is something that doesn't help him greatly with his double teams, with his ability just to get movement off the line of scrimmage. He's got to move these one shades off the line of scrimmage, especially when he gets hip to hip with a player like DJ Campbell. It can't be it can't be his fault when you get into it, because what they call this in these double teams, whenever it's inside zone or outside zone, it's called. So let's say you're a center, right? If you're a center and you have a guy that's on your outside eye, right? That's called a one shade, or like a nose shade, right? It's not a nose tackle. It's not technically a nose tackle because it's not right on your right heads up with you, right? But it's a shade, right? Like it's a shade. He's on the outside half of your body. And what you can do is, if he's to the play side, you engage with two hands, you drive him off the football, you drive him off the line of scrimmage at your zone angle, and you do with what's called a three-hand technique. So you get two hands inside on this guy, but you're going to get help with your guard coming, getting hip to hip with you, getting a third hand on that guy, making sure that he's getting driven off the football at his zone angle, and also making sure it's like, well, what if he decides to stun over this way? Now it becomes a 3-hand technique with the guard with his 2 hands on, the center keeping his 1 hand on, making sure that leverage continues, and then the center can work second level to the linebacker, right? With the way that guy moves across that initial kind of 3-hand technique double team, and whether that 3-hand technique changes to from being 2 hands with the center, 1 hand with the right guard, to 2 hands with the right guard, 1 hand from the center second level, right? Those are all things that we consider as we talk about this. Jake Major, the point is Jake Majors being in a tandem with DJ Campbell is, and as far as getting that one technique off the line of scrimmage, it should be able to help him more than having a freshman Cole Hudson last year. It's just, it's unspeakable, the difference in the 2 players' ability to move bodies into road grade. So if Jake Majors fails in that spot, and all we hear this team talk about, it's like, look, man, here's the thing. Let's just talk. I mean, let's just talk about it. All right. If we're going to be talking about a team that is priding itself and setting its identity on these large humans and size over everything, and look, get them in, get them big, make them body movers. I'm Kyle Flood. I'm going to do what I can to develop them. And look, he's going to. He's the best offensive line coach I've seen at Texas. It's like you can't even. I just comparing him to a guy like Herb Hand or Joe Wickline or State. I mean, I kind of like Stacey Searles, but just comparing him to some of the Maddox, it's just. I mean, it's like it's horseshoes and hand grenades. It's not. It's a different thing, and. So if he can develop them and he can do that, and it's that important to him to have these guys super big, you just look out there. Jake Majors, I mean, he's gotten bigger. What did they say he weighs? Jake Majors is 65. He weighs, well, they're saying he weighs 315. But God, I mean, it's like, I'm not sure he does. And even at 315, you look around at the rest of these guys, DJ Campbell, 343, Cam Williams, we all know that he's just what is he, 369? All these new guys that have come in are just 364, 355. There's clearly been a movement that way. So if something were to happen with Majors, or if they decide to replace him, I think it would be Hayden Connor. It could maybe be Cole Hudson. But as far as the left guard for now, I'm going to have it Cole Hudson behind him. And then people on Orangebloods like, Alex, but how can you have Peyton Kirkland at left guard whenever he played left tackle during the spring? And the reason is because I didn't see Peyton Kirkland at left tackle at all in the spring. The left tackles I saw were Malik Agbo, and then behind him it was Andre Kojo and Trevor Gooseby. Those were the guys I saw. We heard that Gooseby got some run actually with the 2s with Cam Williams over at the right tackle in that depth chart scrimmage. Now, I think that's just them kind of messing around with some stuff. I feel like behind Kelvin Banks and somebody stepping in for him, either Christian Jones or Cam Williams, Malik Agbo, number 67, would probably be the first man up, the redshirt freshman. But I'll say this about Andre Kojo. I was not a giant fan of his huddle reel. I never saw him live. And what you heard from the fans, but Alex, he's only like 14 years. He wasn't really 14, but I think he was like 16 years old or something. Like he's a young guy. And you know what? For once, these people yelling at me, I mean, hey, not for once. They're oftentimes they're right, but they were right about this. Kojo has looked better than I expected in this fall with the way that he, just the way he moves his feet. Clearly, he's not. You wouldn't mistake the guy for a ballerina, and he's got some things to do with getting a little bit, buttoned down and tightened up. But he's moving better than I thought. I feel like it probably goes Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, Malik Agbo, and then Kojo or Gooseby at left tackle, left guard, Hayden Connor, Cole Hudson, Peyton Kirkland. Look, Peyton Kirkland has just played. He's 74, right? No, 74 is Gooseby. Peyton Kirkland 71. So, like he's been playing left. He's been playing left guard, and then I would say it's either him or Max Merrill is kind of the super big depth there. We're talking about a true freshman and a true sophomore. Or no, a redshirt sophomore. At center, we talked about it. Jake Majors, Hayden Connor, or maybe Cole Hudson. But the guy who lines up with the second team, as long as Hayden Connor's not moving in at center with that group, is going to be Connor Robertson. So you kind of have him as the 3 or the 2B. Sawyer, Gorham, Welch comes in behind those guys. At the right guard, we talked about DJ Campbell. His immediate backup is, it's going to be Cam Williams if anything happens, you would think. But you could put an or there to maybe Cole Hudson or NATO. And people on the message board were saying, but he's played left guard. He's been playing left guard. Haven't you heard? And I'm like, well, I've been to practices and he was playing right. He's played some left guard. He's also played some right guard. And this stuff that's going on with the left guard, whenever they get somebody in there, whenever Hayden Connor moves to center and they need to move somebody up from the second group to be the second left guard, well, guess what? It's Cole Hudson. And I know you guys I know that NATO is a great prospect. And we all want to see him. And look, he's going to play. And people are like, and you haven't buried at right guard. And I'm like, I haven't buried. I have DJ Campbell. And then I have 3 guys, Cam Williams or Cole Hudson or NATO Umeazolo. And what that means is that he could be as good as number 2 on the depth chart. He's not buried behind all those guys. It's the freshman Connor Stroh. At the right tackle, of course, we have Christian Jones. His obvious immediate backup is Cam Williams. And then the freshman playing underneath him is Jaden Chapman. And somebody was saying earlier in the chat that Christian Jones had a really good season last season. We gave Kelvin Banks his props for what he's been able to do just from a historical perspective, right? When you look at him versus history. Christian Jones, we talked about those deep dig grades. His average grade last year in the deep dig was a 78. He had his best game. Now, he didn't have any of these that are close up to 82 like Kelvin Banks did, but he had a game that was an 80.83 and a game that was an 80.21. And if you look at the historical comparisons, right, he only allowed disruption once every 40.6 snaps. This is where you see with Kyle Flood what's different than with the offensive line coaches we've had around Texas who were in charge of the kind of later career development of players like Kent Perkins, if that makes any sense. A guy that you feel like has all the talent in the world, a guy that's big and strong, a guy who can move bodies, a guy with a really good power step, a guy with a deep, he's better on the right side. He's got a little bit of a clunky kick, but he stays relatively balanced. He doesn't get overextended. These were all things that he had real trouble with over on the left, and it doesn't have to do with the fact that he just moved. He's been getting developed well, and the proof of that is that only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 6, 7, 8, 9 players out of the 68 tenures where I've graded every single snap that these offensive linemen have taken. Is that really only 8? 9. He's in 10th place at 40.6 snaps per disruption allowed. Ahead of him is Jake McMillan, if you remember him as a sophomore, 41.1 snaps per disruption allowed. Junior Angelau is a junior, 41.1 allowed. Donald Hawkins is a senior, 41.3. Zach Shackelford as a senior, 42.3. You forget Zach Shackelford made money on an NFL practice squad with the Bucs for a few years. Here's another one. Here's a blast from the past. Taylor Doyle is a junior, only allowed disruption on 603 snaps, once every 46.4. Samuel Cosme as a junior, now playing guard for the Washington Commanders, 568 snaps in his last season at Texas. He allowed disruption only once every 54.1 snaps. And then after that, you get up to Kelvin Banks, Connor Williams, Trey Hopkins. So Christian Jones moved up to pretty elite air as far as what we've seen at Texas so far. And he does deserve some recognition as far as that's concerned. Blake, any news from X? Because it's not Twitter, it's X. Any news from X about anything regarding Desmond Ridder tonight? I don't want to get swindled like we got swindled on the Anthony Richardson stuff. Haven't seen anything? All right, well, why don't you come on and we'll talk about it. We have the specs. We have the specs text line. Look, like 2202 say, why so mad, bro? I mean, you think I'm mad? This is football with friends, dude. This is fun as hell. I'm not mad. Get fired up, dude. We're talking football.
Your rants are fun. Nothing wrong with
talking football, dude. It's fun. Let's see. The Christian Jones is becoming what he is now is a cool story. That's what Paul says. Ben Webb, love what y'all are doing. That's great. Particularly the one with Catch and Chad. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Here it is, a super chat. All right, so here we go. Love the show, brother. UT 19 grad here. Are you more confident with the interior of the O-line getting a push in the run game or the interior of the D-line stopping the run? Or both stout? You know, as long as I'm kind of confident with both. I mean, I hate to say it. I don't want to. I'm not trying to jinx this team, dude. It's like I live in a household with a. We got. I mean, just look. We got kids. Like I think the kids are all wearing burnt orange today. My wife was on Texas Palm. I mean, it's like her sister was in the band. I mean, what was like. I don't want to get any people's hopes up because I've seen people who are really, really invested in this program. And we're talking, 30, 40-year season ticket holders, just get their hopes up and get them crushed. And I don't want to do that. So I take it really seriously when I'm saying, man, I think they're both going to be kind of good. Right.
Yeah. Let's rephrase it a little bit. What do you think about those two position groups versus past Longhorn teams? How much better are they this year in those areas versus last year?
Well, so they'll be better this year as far as the offensive line with getting the push he's talking about, because DJ Campbell is a starter instead of Cole Hudson. Very, very, very simple. Like they're going to be better getting that's what DJ Campbell does is he moves bodies off the line of scrimmage. He's very good at it. He's a man with a. What is that movie where he says I'm a man with a very particular set of skills?
Oh, that's
he's got to get his daughter back. Or something.
Movies? Which one is
that?
Yeah.
It's like DJ Campbell's got a very particular set of skills. You don't want to mess with a guy with that set of skills. So yeah, that's going to be better. I'm not sure we can say in totally good faith that the defense is going to be better at stopping the run just because of the personnel that they lost Moro Jomo. They lost, of course, DeMarvion. They lost Keandre Coburn. With that being said, there were times last year when the defensive line wasn't getting its run fits very well anyway, right? So I think more Byron Murphy's good. I think more Tavondre Sweat's good. I saw a list earlier today. People are like, Alex, you're on your depth chart. You need to switch Alfred Collins, and you need to put in you need to get him over to Tavondre Sweat. And I'm just like, what? And so I look and I see it's like there's some draft website. I'm not even sure which one it was, but I was going to check it today because I wanted to look and see for the Ohio State guys on defense so I could ask Anand about them. And they had Tavondre Sweat as like number 67 prospect in the class.
I saw that. Yep.
It's like, I mean, are you kidding? So anyway, so more Sweat's good, more Byron Murphy's good. I think that there were issues last year that Keandre Coburn sometimes had with his pad level with getting his run fits. I mean, I hate to say it about Coburn. I've grown to really like him through the draft process, know his agent. I mean,
Snacks, man.
Yeah. I mean,
OB athlete. We had him on the channel for a while.
He was great. Awesome. He's now a young father. It's so cool to see the way he talks about his young family and what he needs to. But it's like none of it's like his pad. His pad level was too high at times. I'm so like it just kind of was one of these things.
Jareth, we're trying to figure out how much he's going to play.
Yeah, so take the under on that. that one. I mean, that would be a monster line, even if it was a regular game where he was going to be playing. Where you figure that he's going to be getting his full complement. I mean, 50 rushing yards, 40 receiving yards. That's probably for a running back. That's probably 5 receptions. You're talking in a PPR league. You're looking at a 14-point game. That's a good game. If he plays something, I think that there's, if he played, he'll play a series if he plays. Cody. Alex, can you find what Finer Foods is? Yeah. So Specs. So basically, Specs is.
Hold on. I got something for this. I got 15 seconds from Specs Lady.
No matter what you're needing, Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
So there you go. Yeah, so the specs by my house, which is the closest one, is in the Hill Country Galleria. I'll tell you, man. I'll tell you what, the wine guy there is so cool, dude. I always walk in. I'm like, what's up, man? He goes, oh, dude, just living the dream, brother. Just like, the guy loves his job there.
I love a happy liquor salesman.
Being around that wine, spirits, and finer foods. Cody, I think what it means by finer foods is it like. The one that was over by my old house, which was by the old Highland Mall, that one had like a little deli section where they had some kind of like sliced meats, and you could get generally like smoked kind of pepperoni steaks. You could get
sausage
that. But I think mainly what you get there is like it has like little cookies, and you can get like candies that are made by things like Toblerone or some kind of,
that kind of stuff.
Dark chocolate. And then just little stuff like, say like little cans you can open that have like little caviar things that you can use to make drinks and stuff like that.
So
charcuterie board kind of stuff. Yeah. Finer food. Those little tiny those little tiny pickles that look like they have the little nubs on them, those little things, stuff like that.
Cody also misspelled charcuterie. I'm not going to say what he put, but
sure. So, Blake, we got to finally talk about it. You got to declare your intentions. So hunting versus fishing. For me, here's what it is for me. Okay. We talked about the alcohol intake part of it first. I still don't mind it. I'm very, very, very careful around guns. I do not mind having in the side-by-side koozie, can of beer when you're driving around, when you're doing it. It can't be like it is when you're fishing though. And you take
the cooler.
You can't do it. You have firearms, right? But I mean, we're all adults here. You can throw back a beer at the ranch. But it's nothing like, the spread that you can just lay out whenever you're out there fishing. So there's that part of it. A little bit more of a relaxed atmosphere. You can do it until you're older. That's something like you're like me, you turn into your young 40s. You're like, how long am I going to be able to really go out here and hike up the side of this mountain to set up a ground blind here where I think that axis herd's going to come through. Fishing, I can do that with my grandkids sitting on my lap, right?
Well, that was going to be part of my argument. And I'm an avid enthusiast of both, but I'm going to vote fishing based on accessibility, because this show could end. I could go grab a fishing pole and go to my neighborhood pond and be there in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and not everybody has access to. You and I have made friends, but clearly, look, if you guys do have hunting properties, I would love to come see them. I would love to come visit you guys, come check out the hunting property. Even if you don't want to be there, you just like to give me access. I'll always shut the gates behind me. I will always leave it cleaner than I left it. I'm a very, very respectful
leave some beer in the fridge
person. Certainly don't do anything. It's irresponsible. It's alex@rosterwatch.com. But so I have a little network of people who kindly allow me to hunt on their spots, and I'll actually go out hunting on this next Friday for Axis. I always do it on the weekend of the first Texas game before I have to start doing the deep dig just to clear my mind. Yeah. So I'll be out doing that. I love it so much. I love the food much better. There's also the stuff with the fish. If you get a bunch, it's hard to freeze. I like to eat it fresh. If it's white flaky fish, it simply won't freeze. It won't keep. I guarantee you. Try keeping like a bunch of crappie and freezing it. Like it's not going to work. The only fish you can freeze are salmon. You can freeze tuna. I don't think it's even any good to freeze red snapper. I don't think it's good to freeze speckled trout. So I would never do it with flounder. So I think the meat is better. I have more uses for the hunting. I mean, I hate to say it. I think I'm on the opposite side. I think I'm going to go with hunting. But fair enough. Here's the good thing. We don't have to make that choice.
We can do both.
Why can't we have both? It's like the meme of the on the commercial. So, hey, listen, thanks to everybody so much in the Specs chat line. We're going to be back tomorrow for a AAA Friday. Ask Alex anything. So for Blake,